Baseball Tonight, the podcast.
This is the Baseball Tonight podcast for Thursday, March 9th, 2017. I'm Buster Olney, and our esteemed producer is Josh Macri. Today, we'll be talking with Twins outfielder Byron Buxton, who answers the question, who would win a race between he and Billy Hamilton? You get a report on the defending American League champions from Paul Hoynes of the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Jayson Stark joins us to discuss a big concern about the highest-paid pitcher in baseball. But first, some news and notes. How about Mike Trout doing Mike Trout things in spring training?
Here's Trout batting, and he hits the ball well into right center field. Chasing is the right fielder. The ball's over the head of Kivlahan. Coming in and scoring is Cole Calhoun. Trout will go to third. Dives in safely with an RBI triple. It's 5-0 Angels.
That courtesy of Fox Sports. Jock Peterson of the Dodgers led off the game.
3-2 pitch on the way to Peterson. That's turned on, hit high in the air, deep right field. Michael Reed is back. He looks up, and it is long gone. Jock Peterson took this one up and out of here to right field, and the Dodgers on the board, 1-0.
Team USA played the Minnesota Twins, and center fielder Byron Buxton made a great catch.
And a righty delivers, swung on well, stroke center field. Buxton still tracking. Buxton still tracking on the track, jumps up, makes the catch. Timed it perfectly. Got on the warning track, jumped up, caught it, and made contact with that padded wall in center field.
That call courtesy of Fox Sports. Matt Duffy, the shortstop of the Tampa Bay Rays, is coming back from surgery, and his recovery has been slow to the point that our friend Mark Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times is reporting that he may not be ready for the start of the season. Socrates Brito dislocated his finger sliding headfirst in a game on Wednesday. He needed surgery. He's out indefinitely. One of the Braves' best prospects is second baseman Ozzie Albies, and he has been cleared to play. He's expected to be in the lineup today. He suffered a devastating injury last year with his elbow. Sean Doolittle is set to face hitters next week, so you hope for the best for the Oakland reliever. Tyler Skaggs of the Angels is dealing with some shoulder weakness, which has slowed him down. Josh Donaldson had his best day of work, and he's itching to get back into the lineup. Jason Kipnis, who's still dealing with some shoulder problems, is not ready to play. We'll be talking with Paul Hoynes of the Cleveland Plain Dealer about that coming up. Rick Porcello got hit on the pitching hand by a chopper in Boston's exhibition against the Mets, but he says he's okay. Chris Tillman, who's working his way back from some shoulder fatigue, had a successful bullpen session. And Tim Tebow started in the Mets exhibition against the Boston Red Sox. He went 0 for 3. He was hit by a pitch. He was picked off first base. He struck out twice and hit into a double play. And afterward, Mets manager Terry Collins talked about what the day meant.
Well, anytime you're playing a big league game, I don't care who you play, I don't care how many big league players on the other side. When you play in a game, you find out the speed of the game's fast. There's a lot of action that happens in a hurry, and you've got to adjust to it. And I think anytime Tim can be exposed to this, it's going to help him. You know, this guy is a winner. He has been a winner his whole life. He's made adjustments his whole life, and this is going to be a chance for him to. We're going to play him Wednesday. I'm going to play him defensively Friday, and get him back over here and get him some more at bats. But he's going to have to adapt quickly. What he's attempting to do, not a lot of guys would even try it. So I salute the fact that he's given it his best. I mean, you see his hands are all taped up from the blisters from swinging. So he means business.
Tim Tebow talked about learning a lot from that first game.
I think I learned a lot of things. Just getting in there, seeing pitches, for the first time competing, and felt like I put some good swings when I swung. Didn't necessarily think some of those were strikes, and so I was just trying to hold off, and some of the guys in here thought might have been a little inside or so. But, you just learn, and it's the first day for me getting a chance to compete, and I'll learn a lot from it.
Josh, I'd give one piece of advice to Tebow. Don't turn back and chatter at the umpire in your first spring training game ever. What do you think?
I think that's probably some sound advice. But, hey, like he said, he's learning. So I'm sure he appreciates the lesson, Buster.
There you go. He said he won't be discouraged by his hitless afternoon.
as an athlete, you can't let one day define anything, right? It's a process, and there's all these things you have been working for, and I know a lot of other people will sensationalize it, and regardless of what happens, it'll be the best day of all time or the worst day of all time, but for me, it's just a day. It's just the next day. It's just the next opportunity to get 4 at-bats, learn from it, and get ready to go recover, go get some sleep, and wake up and get ready to do it again, because there's a lot more days like this.
In Arizona's camp, concern over Zack Greinke's velocity, his fastball velocity in his start on Wednesday, 89.5 miles per hour. That's a few ticks down from where he was last year. And the Arizona Republic reporter, Nick Picoro, spoke with Greinke about his velocity.
Better than the first time, just started executing pitches a little better, especially second and third inning. Felt like it was getting better each inning, so that was good.
You satisfied with your velocity?
No, I'd rather be more, but that's just what it is at the moment. And hopefully it'll get a little better as the camp goes.
Physically, you felt good?
Yeah, felt good.
Let's get to it.
He's the $1 Million Man from $1 Million Arm. Action! It's Jayson Stark on Baseball Tonight.
Jayson Stark covers baseball for ESPN. And Jayson, I got to believe that one of the big topics among evaluators out in Arizona today is going to be the diminished velocity of Zack Greinke. We just heard from him and speaking with the Arizona Republic, saying it's not ideal that his fastball is down to 89.5 miles per hour. It's down a few ticks, but it might be that, like a lot of veteran pitchers, he just needs a little bit more time to build up some arm strength, and that everything will be fine, and that would be more ideal. But let's face it, he sort of has reached that age in terms of the innings he's accumulated, in terms of what's on his birth certificate, where you start to get questions. And the Diamondbacks' best-case scenario this year, I think, would be if Zack Greinke reestablishes his value to the degree that they can convince ownership to dump the contract, eat some of it, to move him out of there, because it absolutely constricts them in what else they're trying to do. So Zack Greinke with diminished velocity, or this early, that is a worst-case scenario for the Diamondbacks. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, this is on a lot of levels. Buster, I was actually fooling with this a few days ago, and I know you've been talking about how the Diamondbacks are one of those teams that could surprise. And it's, again, I was just messing around with wins above replacement for Zack Greinke, Shelby Miller, and A.J. Pollock 2 years ago versus last year. We're talking about a difference in 8 of 18 wins. 18. Like, suppose those 3 guys were just to bounce back to 3/4 of what they were 2 years ago. I mean, you're looking at a team in the mid-80s and wins with more upside than that even. I mean, Paul Goldschmidt had a down year too. So just in terms of how competitive they might be, a lot of it begins with Zack Greinke, because you know they're going to score. And then, obviously there's the side of this that you just described, but, I love watching that guy pitch. I've often thought of him as a modern-day Greg Maddux. Now, Greg Maddux was able to evolve as his velocity slipped from the mid-90s when he was young into the lower 90s and even upper 80s. He was so smart. He was such a mind reader. He was still able to compete. So maybe that's the model for Zack Greinke, but we're talking about a guy who also had a shoulder issue at the end of last year, and so you got to watch this one really closely.
Yeah, and I'd say because of his versatility and how smart he is, I would put, if I were to assess a level of concern at this point in the first week of March on this, at this point, between a 2 and a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10, because I've seen a lot of pitchers, especially older pitchers, early in camp, because they sort of ease into the throwing program. The first couple times out, there's a response from the media of, wow, the velocity's down. I mean, I saw the best example of that with the Yankees year after year with Mariano Rivera, who'd come out in his first couple times, because Rivera wouldn't even pick up a ball till he showed up in spring training at the end of his career. So he'd only been throwing a few weeks, and he'd be 88, 89, and we'd all be writing about concerns about the possible end of Rivera's career, and then he'd go out and post a 1.8 ERA. And Greinke may do that, but it is something worth watching. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would your level of concern be?
Right now, I'm going to say 7, just because of the shoulder.
Wow.
I know you're right but I can also remember Roy Halladay 2012, right? Has the incredible year 2011, and really empties the tank in that incredible Game 5 against Chris Carpenter the year before in October. And came out, and, I mean, this was the talk that spring, immediately, first 2-3 times out. What's happened to Roy Halladay's stuff? And he never got it back. And so, I mean, if Zack Greinke is healthy enough to at least locate, I think he can succeed without velocity. But if his shoulder's still bothering him, if his velocity is down, and he can't command, then this is a bigger problem than just your basic first couple of starts of spring training.
So concerns about Zack Greinke, but excitement about a pitcher you just saw, Garrett Cole of the Pirates. And let's face it, the Diamondbacks, Pirates, very similar in that they have to have a lot of things go right in order to compete within their specific context. And Garrett Cole would be at the top of the list in terms of the things that the Pirates need to go right. And he looks great, huh?
You know, I saw him yesterday against that Dominican lineup, and that is one scary lineup. We can talk about them in a minute, but Garrett Cole, fastball, Buster, was 95 to 97 consistently. Slider was 89. He had one slider that was clocked at 91. And he's pitching against the best lineup he may ever face. Seriously, that Dominican lineup is ridiculous. He had one ball hit hard, and it was from his friend Gregory Polanco, ironically enough. All right, so Gregory Polanco doubles to lead off the third inning, and he then rips through Wellington Castillo, Carlos Santana, Robinson Cano, bam, 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 thanks for playing. And it really opened my eyes just how in command he was. I mean, he's not striking out a lot of hitters, but he's controlling at bats, and his intensity for a game on March 8th was incredible. Talking to one of the scouts who was sitting behind the plate yesterday, he said it felt like a playoff game, those 3 innings, because those Dominican hitters come to play, and Garrett Cole was ready. It was cool to watch.
Yeah, it's interesting because the day before, Kevin Gossman faced that same team, and that lineup is so good that it becomes a nice barometer, right, or a nice test for these guys. And Kevin Gossman looked great against it as well. You mentioned the depth of the Dominican lineup. For you, are they the favorites?
Well, that's the best lineup ever trotted out there. It's just amazing. I can't imagine who's going to hit eighth and ninth on that team. It's going to be no fun. Our pal Enrique Rojas, apparently, who was from the Dominican, set off an incredible controversy because he picked Team USA. He doesn't think that the Dominican has enough pitching. But what I saw yesterday was just incredible. All right, now Garrett Cole pitches 3 shutout innings against him. And then Tyler Glasnow goes out there, has a good first inning on the mound, and then you could see him losing it before your eyes. And then the last inning he was out there, they had to get him out of there eventually because he couldn't even get an out. But they put up a 9-run inning, 10 straight hitters reached base, 5 walks, 5 hits. There were 4 mound visits. There was a wild pitch. Manny Machado hit a home run that, I mean, you might want to duck because it might be coming through your window any minute. Actually hit that tiki bar out there on the boardwalk in center field. I just wish the hitters luck who have to face these guys, these Dominican hitters. Poor Tyler Glasnow. Like, he had a couple of at-bats in that inning where he got up 0-2. Jose Bautista was one of them. Nelson Cruz with the bases loaded was another. And the next thing you know, they just won't chase. And they're walking. He faced 6 hitters in that inning, walked 4 of them. It was a meltdown, and it was really caused by how good that team is offensively.
Speaking of great hitters, you wrote a piece the other day about Miguel Cabrera and about how he's the counter-argument to the theory that RBIs are a meaningless stat. And in my pre-show note you sent me, you mentioned that this was the best talk you've ever had with him about hitting. And I agree with you. You can have some great talks with Miggy when he's in the right mood about hitting. What did you learn?
Yeah, it was great. Well, just to set up the premise of the piece. Look, I understand why sabermetricians tell you that the RBI is not what people thought it was 20 years ago or 50 years ago. It really does have a lot to do with who's lucky enough to come to the plate with the most runners on base. That's true in most cases for most normal human beings. But I've always said that if you think RBIs are meaningless, watch Miguel Cabrera hit. And, I mean, just a few numbers, Buster. Since he debuted, he's driven in the most runs of any player in baseball, and only Albert Pujols is within 50. There's a baseball prospectus stat, which is percent of runners driven in. So it's not a counting stat. It's a percentage stat. And we went back over the last 12 years. He's been among the league leaders every one of those seasons except two. That tells us something. And then we looked at his numbers with the bases empty and men on. His OPS with men on base, 52 points higher than with no one on base. And, you know, we had ESPN Stats and Info look at the greatest run producers in history. And it's not unusual for that for guys to be better with men on base, not that much better. So the numbers tell the story. But to me, the most fun part was just listening to Miguel Cabrera talk hitting. Because, I mean, I always think when he gets to home plate in those situations, he's like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, you know, looking over the line of scrimmage, looking down the field, and figuring out how they're going to carve up the defense. That's what this guy does. I think my favorite part of it was him admitting to me that he plays mind games with the catcher and pitcher by moving around in the box. Sometimes he'll get closer to the plate. Sometimes he'll get farther away from the plate. He's trying to lure them into giving him a pitch that he's looking for. And he admitted this to me, that he knows they're watching, and they think they're reading him, but really he's reading them. So he said it's not like guessing. It's like having a plan. It was really cool to have a guy who thinks hitting to that level lets you in like that.
Yeah, the best conversation I ever had with him was about his use of analytics, which is basically zero. And J.D. Martinez told me that his teammate told me that when the Tigers have the hitting meetings, that Miguel is always respectful of what the coaches are presenting, and so as the best player on the team, as a Hall of Fame hitter, he will sit in the meetings, but everyone knows that he's not really listening. And Miggy told me that he doesn't like to know anything about the pitcher until he's in the on-deck circle. And then what he wants to know is what's the velocity reading, and then he can react. And then he looked at me and describing this. He said, first pitch, I know everything. And I said, what do you mean? And he basically described, if it's a fastball inside, okay, that's how you're going to pitch me. You're going to be aggressive in the strike zone. He said if it's a breaking ball the first pitch, then that tells me what the pitcher's mindset is. And then his attitude is, I have it. And it's interesting you mentioned that about how the statistical, the sabermetric community views RBI. It's always been interesting to me that on one hand, you hear from that community that RBI don't matter, and also that there's no such thing, any evidence that lineup protection helps. And it's the same case where, okay, that's the view of the folks doing these statistics, but if you go talk to pitchers and catchers and managers, they will tell you over and over and over, yes, it does matter who's in the on-deck circle. They do care a lot about that. They make tons of decisions based on that. And with some hitters, not all of them, Joey Votto has a different perspective, but a guy like Cabrera will tell you that's what he's going for, is driving in the run.
He lives for that. And, so I went to A.J. Hinch, who's the manager of the Astros, and could we agree they might be the most data-driven team in baseball? Right? We can, right?
Yep.
And, A.J. played. He was a catcher, so he sees it from that perspective. He's a manager, so he sees it from that perspective. And he's been in the front office of data-driven teams. He sees it from that perspective. And he told me he sees it from all sides, but he just admitted it's one of the worst feelings you can have, knowing that guy's coming to the plate in those sorts of situations. And he said the worst part of it is, normally you think that the pressure's on the hitter, and so you can kind of control the at-bat by messing with that, using that. He said, but when Miguel Cabrera's up there, you always feel like he's in control, not the other way around, and you're just along for the ride. He also had an interesting observation about how important it is for a team on every level to have run producers. And he equated it to, the kinds of stats that we now look at, win expectancy, win probability, run differential. He said, those things come from the kind of numbers Miguel Cabrera has put up for 10 years. It's actually longer than 10 years now, but it was an interesting way to connect those dots so that even if you understand the argument, which I think we both do, of why RBIs ain't what they used to be, when you have certain elite hitters with this great a feel for the game, I don't think any of that applies.
We got about 5 minutes left. I got two more topics for you. One, you have a piece running today, managers proposing creative signals to signify an intentional walk. And when I saw this idea, I said, I wish I'd come up with that. That is a great idea and fun conversation.
Yeah, it was really fun. I don't know if people know this, but all right, now we don't have the requirement that pitchers lob those 4 pitches in there at 37 miles an hour to have an intentional walk anymore. And so instead of signaling to the catcher with 4 fingers, managers have to signal the umpires. And how are they supposed to do that? Here's the answer. Major League Baseball doesn't care. So I went around and asked a bunch of managers about it, and they had some fun with it. Pete Buchanan, took one hand out and then had his fingers do the walking with the other hand. So that was good. Brad Osmus held up 4 fingers, but there was 3 fingers on one hand, 1 on the other hand, and I said, well, what is that? That was to indicate that he could walk you in any count, which you can, by the way. And Don Mattingly wanted to know what Osmus was doing, and I told him. So I said, well, what's your sign going to be? And he held up 3 fingers instead of 4. And why was that? Because he didn't go to Dartmouth like Brad Osmus. Wanted to make that clear. A.J. Hinch, he had a really good idea. He said that when the really great hitters come up there, Miggy, Mike Trout, whoever, his thing is to just walk to the top step, take off his cap, and salute. Right? Salute the guys and say, never mind. And he also said that he would like to just inform them of the intentional walk while they're still in the on-deck circle, so they could just go right from the on-deck circle right down to first base. So that would be interesting. I did have a question about whether that would constitute a plate appearance if they never actually made it to home plate, but I'll let the statisticians deal with that. And then the guy I probably had the most fun with was John Gibbons of the Blue Jays. Buster, he has several signals in mind, but let's just say we can't reveal a couple of them on a family podcast. But the one that we can reveal, and there's actual video of this on our site, you have to watch it. And he kind of takes his left hand and he kind of sweeps the back of his left hand up there toward the sky, and he's shouting at an imaginary hitter, "Go down there, go, get down, beat it." Like, what was that? And so it doesn't matter to him. He only issued 10 intentional walks the whole season. And so he really doesn't care about the intentional walk, let alone the intentional walk rule. And if they want to get mad at him, he doesn't care. Anyway, had a good time doing this. There's a tremendous video with the piece, too. I really urge everybody to check it out.
Yeah, it'll be on ESPN.com today. And last one for you. Tim Tebow plays an exhibition game for the Mets for the first time. And I wrote on my piece today about his performance. He went 0 for 3, was hit by a pitch, struck out twice, hit into a double play, was picked off first base, initially stood in the wrong on-deck circle. He went over to the Red Sox side because he thought as a left-handed hitter he could be on that side. I wrote about how, I was absolutely struck by the way that Rick Porcello pitched to him. And Rick Porcello doesn't have an electric fastball. Last year, averaged about 92 miles per hour. He's in the bottom third of pitchers. And yet, he didn't mess around at all. And he wasn't trying to locate the pitch. He was like, here you go. Here's 92 miles per hour over the middle of the plate, over the outer half of the plate. See what you can do with it. And Jayson, he was completely overwhelmed. He was so late on his swings. And you could see that the whole day, that he was just late in reacting. And I wrote at the end of my piece, I really feel like that it's fine if he wants to try to play, but we should not pretend this is more than what it actually is. And that Rick Porcello is as close to being an NFL quarterback as Tebow is to being a major league hitter. And that Tebow at the moment is much closer to being the Philly Fanatic or the San Diego Chicken than being a major league hitter. And you know what? That's okay, but let's not pretend. And it's why I hope that Terry Collins doesn't have to constantly answer questions about this guy as if he's a legitimate prospect. What was your reaction?
Well, first off, I hope you saw the great stat that went with us, the great note that he was the first Heisman Trophy winner to face the incumbent Cy Young Award winner since Frank Viola against Bo Jackson.
Wow.
Thought that was kind of fun. Second, I admire what he's trying to do. I give him a lot of credit for putting himself out there and putting himself in a situation that has got to be almost embarrassing at times. It takes some inner strength to do that.
Yep.
So I admire a guy who has the ability to do something like that out in public. But I have to admit that the incident with the on-deck circle kind of bothered me because, to be a great baseball player, you have to have a certain level of attention to detail, like off-the-charts attention to detail, really, right, to be good at it. And I can honestly say I've never, in all the major league games I've ever witnessed and spring training games I've ever witnessed, I've never seen a player go stand in the wrong batter's box. And it just hit me that here's a guy who not only has not played enough baseball to do this, he clearly hasn't watched enough baseball to do this. And that makes this even harder than I think we even imagine. I've always told my kids, you can learn a lot by watching. Watch good players. Watch your sport. Try to observe what people do when they're successful, and that's a great way to teach yourself. A guy who's just standing in the wrong on-deck circle, even for a second till they point it back in the other direction, he hasn't watched enough, and that's going to be trouble.
Josh, I know you had some thoughts about this. What'd you think of Tebow's day?
I thought it was awful, but as you and I spoke about before the show, I don't think Tebow is the one who deserves to get trashed here. I think there are a lot of other guilty parties, ourselves included, and by us I mean the corporation that we work for. It's the coverage that's obnoxious. It's not Tebow that's obnoxious. I could say tomorrow that it's my dream to be a Major League ball player, but I'm not the idiot. The team that signs me and the organization that covers me looks more idiotic than I do, in my opinion.
Yeah, and takes it seriously, and that's what I wrote about. Again, I think if Tebow wants to go and play in the minor leagues for the year and try to get better and pursue this dream and serve as a mentor for younger players, because all you hear is how hard he works, and he's obviously a great guy, but don't pretend that he's a real prospect. And I hope that the Mets basically free up Terry Collins to say that when he talks to the media. Look, you know what, Tim is not on our radar now, but you respect how hard he works. But I think if you don't do that, then you're just not being truthful, Jason.
Look, Terry Collins is in a really difficult position. Everybody there is in a really difficult position because, you don't want to be in a position of quashing a guy's dreams, right? If he has them and you have a team that's willing to let him explore them, live them out, okay, that's cool. But he is not playing in the big leagues, all right? Let's just all come clean on that. We know that right now. There's no precedent for anybody ever doing this. Nobody's ever not played baseball for 12 years and come back at this age, no matter what kind of raw ability they have, and done this. So case closed. I mean, it's okay to watch this as part of the show, as long as you acknowledge that that's all it is, a show.
Jason, thanks for doing this.
Buster, look forward to seeing you on the spring training trail.
We'll be back in a moment with Byron Buxton of the Minnesota Twins. But first, believe it or not, some people still don't get podcasts. Why they are special and how to listen. You can help change that with a click. Right now, think of someone you care about. What podcast would they really love? Got it? Now do it. Hit the share button on the bottom left of your screen. If they don't know how to listen, offer to show them how. Tell us what you shared with the hashtag Tripod, TRY Pod. Thanks for spreading the word.
And a righty delivers, swung on well, stroke center field. Buxton still tracking. Buxton still tracking on the track. Jumps up, makes the catch. Timed it perfectly. Got on the warning track, jumped up, caught it, and made contact with that padded wall in center field.
Byron, that was your catch against Team USA, and I always love the byplay between players on the other team and a guy who makes a great defensive play. Did anybody say anything to you later in the game about that catch?
They just said good read off the bat. I know me and our outfield coach, Mr. Pick, we've been working hard every day to try to help me get a better first step and to help me get better with my routes. And I think yesterday was good for me, to show that hard work is showing up in the game and helping me out in the long run. Watch a lot of video of it, and it's getting better every day. So that's all I can really ask for. Just go out there and be myself and put in the work, and whatever happens.
What's a big factor for you in getting a strong read right off the bat?
I think it comes down to, as long as I keep my feet moving and be ready for that ball once it's in the hitting zone. I got a great chance of catching anything out there, and that's the way my mentality is. Just go out there and do whatever you can to help your team get back in the dugout. And I mean, if it requires crashing to the wall or diving for baseballs, that's what I want to do to help us get back in there and swing the bat.
Byron, your last 29 games last year, you batted .287. You had an OPS over 1,000. What did you feel like you got better at in that last stretch of games last year?
I think the biggest part was me just bringing the fun back in the game. Of course, early in the year it wasn't pretty, so I think I got down on myself just because I never failed in this game before and didn't know how to take it. And it took me to get sent down to realize, stop thinking about what's going on right there. Be yourself and go out there and have fun. And September, I just told myself to go out there and have the most fun you can. And that just allowed me to free up myself to go out there and be myself and play the game the right way and play the game hard and not worry about what's going on around me. It's go out there, see the ball, hit the ball. Just focused on going out there, doing whatever you can to get a win.
What was the best piece of advice you got during that stretch when you were back down in the minor leagues?
I think it's from my dad and my mom and my wife. They just told me, no matter what happens, they always got support of me and things like that. And it's the backbone of where you come from that you really need at that time, and they was there. So that just gave me the courage and the strength, to start worrying about everything else. You know what you can do, go out there and do it, and be yourself doing it. And that's what I did. I took September and just went out there, and we all competed. We just took September and told ourselves, let's go out here and play the best month of baseball we have left for this year, and that's what we did. And that's what we're just trying to take over and carry over to spring training.
What was the toughest moment for you last season? What was the best moment for you of 2016?
I think the toughest moment was definitely getting sent down the first time. When you start the year out up there, you wanna go out there and start the year off on a great note, and it didn't happen that way for me. And it took some time for me to realize, you got to stop thinking about what you're doing wrong and the things that's negative. You got to go out there and think positive and go out there and compete. And I think that was the turning point after the second time I got sent down. Just sent down, realized, look, I've been putting too much pressure on myself. I've been thinking too much. Hadn't been having fun. And that just took the passion away that I had. And I know I still still got a lot of love for this game. So it took within myself to find that. And I think that was the best part, is me coming from a spot that I've never been in, and to come back and, find myself and realize to know how to get out of certain situations. That was definitely one of the best moments of last year.
Byron, if you had a race against Billy Hamilton, who do you think would win? Because I got to tell you, when I watch either of you run, I'm just blown away by how fast you are.
That's close. I don't know. Billy's fast, I'm fast, but I've never really put myself to be ahead of Billy. So I'm gonna say Billy on this, just because I saw the way he runs, and he got a better technique of running, a little bit smart on the bases. He's one of the guys I watch when it comes to stealing bases and things like that. So I mean, definitely Billy. He's fast.
Torrey Hunter's been around the team, and I'm curious about, in your conversations with him, what does he bring to the table?
Most of our conversations is usually not about baseball, but when we do talk about it, it's more so what I said earlier. Just go out there and be yourself, and have fun. Play the game. Don't worry about where he's going to throw this pitch next, or they're going to hit it here, and I'm not there. Don't worry about that. Just focus on what you can do and what you can control, and everything else will work out for itself. And he reminds me of that, which keeps me level. Keeps me, don't get too high, don't get too low, and that just keeps me on a straight track.
The Twins have a new front office led by Derek Falvey, and I'm curious if you've seen a difference, because he's considered to be one of the leaders in the implementation of advanced metrics. If you have seen a change in terms of the information that's available to you guys yet, and I know it's early in spring training, maybe it would be too early for this to occur, but I'm curious if there have been more discussions along those lines.
Not really, just every morning there in the clubhouse, we're interacting with each other, and I mean, it's been unbelievable. Just the things that, you got new guys coming in, and you don't know what to expect, but it's like they've been here the whole time, and I mean, that's really all we can ask for, is to go out there and, have that good chemistry together to help build us up in the long run.
Hey, Byron, it's great to talk with you. All I've ever heard about you from people after you were taken by the Twins is this is someone who's going to be a leader in this sport because you have such great presence. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
It's time for some Inside Heat on Baseball Tonight.
Paul Hoynes covers the Cleveland Indians, the defending American League champion Cleveland Indians for the Cleveland Plain Dealer. And Hoynesy, right off the top, I will tell you that I sent out a tweet back in January. I picked the Indians to beat the Cubs in the World Series. You buying or no?
I don't know, Buster. It takes so much to get back there. Think of what the Indians had to go through just to get there. But they are a very good team. And right now Carrasco and Salazar are healthy. Michael Brantley has looked really good in a couple of simulated games in the last few days. You've got Edwin Encarnacion. So they certainly are, a contender, a dangerous team. I don't know if they're a World Series team, but they were there last year, and I didn't think I felt the same way.
Yep. You mentioned Michael Brantley. He's the big X factor for the Indians coming into camp. He basically missed almost all last year because of the shoulder problems he was having following surgery. I know that any time last year he would ramp up his work to game speed. That's when he would start to feel discomfort in his shoulder. He hasn't gotten to game speed yet, but it feels like that the Indians are encouraged by his work. Why does this time around feel differently at this point?
Well, I think they're going off him more than anything. He had a simulated game Monday. He hit off of Josh Tomlin and Dan Otero, and took some really good swings. The next day he felt good. He bounced back and yesterday he took another simulated game facing Zach McAllister and Carlos Frias, and took some good swings again. And people have been impressed. The hitting coaches and Chris Antonetti and Terry Francona. They just think that I think he feels that I think Brantley feels a little more optimistic than he did before. But like you said, the real test is when he gets into game action and has to play day after day after day, and just to see how this shoulder responds.
Jason Kipnis has been out with some shoulder issues. How concerned are the Indians about him?
I don't think they're very concerned. He's going to DH tonight or today against the Angels. It's still unclear when he's going to get back on the field, but this is something they tried to get taken care of early. He got a cortisone shot on February 25th in the shoulder, and he seems to be making progress. He's been swinging the bat. They just want to be really careful with him, throwing wise. But I would think, mid to late March, he'll be back on the field playing second base.
Seems like the Indians have been very cognizant of the fact that their pitchers were deep into October, into November for that matter, and it had extra workload. How has that affected their preparation this spring?
I think they have been. There's like four guys really that have been kind of on a slow path. Kluber and Tomlin, who started through most of that postseason, and Cody Allen and Brian Shaw, the two relievers, and they're starting to pitch in games now. Cody Allen and Shaw pitched last night. Kluber made his first start Monday, and Tomlin is going today against the Angels. So we'll get a better sense then. But I think they talking to Kluber after Monday's start, he was a little rusty, but he felt good. He threw 60 pitches, and I think this is, they feel real confident with the program they're on right now.
How much of a hangover was there for the Indians in losing Game 7 of the World Series, which they certainly, in the end, wound up having real opportunities to win, having a 3-1 lead, losing that, coming back late in Game 7, and then again having it slip away?
Yeah, I think there was a hangover. I think, but I think the fact that what they did reach Game 7 with without Carrasco, without Salazar, with Yan Gomes hurt, and with Brantley not playing last year, I think it was almost you can't call it a victory and defeat, but I don't think it was like we lost this thing. I think it was that the Cubs won it, and that when they didn't win Game 5 in Chicago, when they had a chance to wrap it up, they knew they were kind of in trouble in Game 6 and 7 because Kluber and Tomlin were going on short rest, and the Cubs, pitching was lined up. I think, and Francona has said that the Cubs are just a very good team, and he said that after Rajat Davis hit the game-tying home run in Game 7 in the 8th inning, he said a lot of teams would have quit right there or folded, but the Cubs didn't. They came back and they won it, and I think Francona said he's disappointed. He was disappointed, but it didn't last that long because he just thought that he got the most out of his club.
You spent a lot of words last year explaining the impact of Mike Napoli on that clubhouse. I, jumped on board in the postseason in covering the Indians and saw firsthand how big of a deal that was. Chris Jimenez, I think generally speaking, he's got a lot of credit for helping Trevor Bauer turn the corner. Neither one of those guys are with the team this year. What do you make of the clubhouse culture so far early in 2017?
I think it's good. I think it's a little disjointed, because of the WBC. A lot of key guys aren't here. They just left this week. I was talking to Napoli Tuesday when he was working out with the Rangers, in camp with the Rangers, and I think he's happy to be back in with Texas for the third time, but you could hear a little bit of a hurt in his voice that he wasn't coming back to Cleveland, and he kind of felt there was unfinished business, and he had meant really, you hit the nail on the head, Buster. he really meant a lot to that ball club, and I think that's going to be hard to replace. And Francona is pretty blunt about that. That you can't expect Encarnacion to be Mike Napoli, but he is a great hitter, so they'll have to go on from there. But this is a team that's kind of grown up together. You've got Kipnis, you've got Kluber. Lindor is kind of a young guy emerging as a leader, so I think they've got that carry, but, you don't replace Napoli. I think he was a key guy.
Hoynesy, great talking with you. I'm sure I'll see you down the road, and good luck getting some sleep.
Thanks, Buster.
Bleacher Tweets.
Buster, Victor Romero gets us started today. He's at Victor Romero 55, and he says, how likely is it that Chris Archer stays with the Rays all season long?
Well, and this is in reference to all the trade rumors that have been around Chris Archer over the last year. Look, if he pitches great, he's going to be mentioned in trade rumors. And if he pitches great and the Rays struggle, then yeah, I could see him being traded before the deadline.
Next one from Nolan Scad, at Nolan Scad. Buster, did the Tigers make the right move by retaining Brad Ausmus? And do you think he makes it to the All-Star break this season?
I think he's a really good manager, and I'm going to admit I'm biased because I know Brad since he was playing with the Padres in 1993, and I can tell you this from talking with executives with other teams, if he is let go by the Tigers during the year, he's going to have opportunities to manage within 6 months. I mean, he is valued by other folks in baseball.
Absolutely. Next one from Kenneth at UB. Kenneth, he'd like to know, can the Nats win big this year without addressing the closer spot?
I think they kind of have addressed it because they've got some options. Sean Kelly, Joe Blanton is probably not going to be the closer, but they add him to add some depth. Blake Trinan, who is a tremendous sinking fastball. I think out of that mix, they'll be able to find a closer. The most important thing for the Nationals was to get bullpen depth.
Next one from Neil Kelly at Neil K4. He says, is the science and medicine behind pitch counts, usage, and training really making pitchers any safer?
I think specifically the innings counts don't necessarily make them safer because I think teams are learning more and more that each pitcher is an individual case, and so to put one artificial number on all pitchers is kind of silly. But I do think that the improved science, measuring arm speed, arm angles, pitchers' ability to throw from the same spot when their arm angle starts to drop, that raises a red flag. Signs of players fatigued are more at risk for injury. And I think what Ross Atkins said on the podcast last week when he was talking about Aaron Sanchez really spoke a lot about where the industry is. The Jays went into the year thinking, you know what, we're going to use him out of the bullpen, but they measured all those things during the course of the year, and this led to their decision to let Aaron Sanchez go, and they didn't worry about the innings limits, and he was terrific.
A couple more, Buster. First one from Herm Flappington at Balls and Hoops. Love the name, love the question. Herm says, forget about 700 homers. Isn't the best reason for A-Rod to come back to push his Hall of Fame vote to more generous times?
Nah, I don't think it really matters. Either that, the perspective of the writers is going to change, and Clemens and Bonds get in, and once they get in, then I think Alex gets in. But I think he's more worried about other things at the moment, based on what I read. Okay? I mean, he's dating J-Lo, reportedly, Josh.
Hey, God bless him. Good for him. J-Lo's a Hall of Famer. I don't know about A-Rod, but J-Lo is a Hall of Famer. There's no question about that. And finally, Buster, we got this one from Nathan at GNilly97. Buster, the world needs to know, what's a more surprising strikeout? Tim Tebow yesterday or the mighty Casey at the bat?
Nathan, I'm going to ask Josh to give you a come on, man.
Come on, man. It's clearly Tebow. Everyone knew that Casey had some holes in his swing, but the fact that Tebow struck out really shocked the world, if you ask me.
Oh, man. You know what? I disagree with that, but I'm going to let your answer stand for us, okay?
Keep those Bleacher Tweets coming. Use the hashtag Bleacher Tweets.
Well, that's it for today. My thanks to Byron Buxton, to Paul Hoynes, to Jayson Stark, and to Josh Macri, who produces this podcast every single day. Have a great day, everybody, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Baseball Tonight podcast. If you're playing fantasy baseball, don't forget to listen to the Fantasy Focus podcast. Check out all podcasts at espn.com/podcenter. Baseball Tonight, the podcast.